Joan was gonna hop on, but um I don't see her yet. I know she wasn't feeling great. But so we're gonna go over well, Andrew pulled this directly from the legal update just at the end of January. And kind of just like another angle on the appraisal process. Um And, we've had appraisers on before, but I think we're just gonna be answering some legal update questions that we had. So I'm not sure. We probably won't take up the full hour today, Andrew. Don't you think, Andrew? Probably
No,
not.
probably not.
Yeah. But then after that, we can always open it up to general questions like we do. Questions around this topic specifically, but then also again, if you guys have just general transactional issues, we always want to make sure to take up that time for that kind of stuff too, of those kind of questions. So, okay, so Andrew, are you take it away? Okay.
Yeah, I can go over this, and I
Yeah.
think kind of what prompted this actually a couple of years ago, two maybe even like 3 years ago, I started getting kickbacks from appraisers stating, roof. I think it started with a roof. A roof was bad, and I reached out to the lender and I said, "Hey, this is really weird. Appraiser is talking about the roof being an issue, and now we have to get an inspection of the roof or whatever." And my lender had said, "Yeah, we're starting to see a lot of that. Investors are getting a little bit picky on buying these mortgages in the secondary market. So yeah, we're gonna, appraisers are starting to note things on their appraisal reports." And so it wasn't. I was working with an investor at the time, and he, the roof was bad. We knew it was bad going in, but he was just gonna take that on, and then it grew into this whole issue. So um, then when I saw this in legal hot tips, I thought, well, maybe we should talk about this as a brokerage and just bring it out there because this was not the norm a couple of years ago.
Yeah. Um, oh yeah, speak to yeah, just the fact that the complications of the home inspection contingency expiring and then this coming up, unless this is later on.
Yeah, if you go
Okay.
later and yeah, if you go
Okay.
to the next slide,
Okay.
I kind of have it. I have bullet points. So the question on the legal hot tips was the agent had a listing. The accepted offer included an inspection, appraisal, and finance contingencies. The inspection contingency had expired. The appraisal report came back recommending an inspection of the basement, and the lender had now made that a requirement, that inspection a requirement before issuing their loan commitment. So I think out of that situation, we have a couple of questions. Can an appraiser recommend inspections? Is the seller required to allow such an inspection since the inspection contingency has already passed? And what happens if defects are found in the inspection? What happens if the deal falls apart? And thinking about FHA and VA government backed financing, things that you might want to be on the lookout for, either as a buyer's agent or even on the sell side, because if you're going to be on the sell side, you're going to encounter these once you have the accepted offer.
Mhm.
So in the next slides, I've kind of picked apart each of these bullet points. So can
Okay.
an appraiser recommend an inspection? The appraiser may be required by the lender not only to provide an opinion of value, but to also comment on the condition of the property. Whether or not the appraiser, knows our laws regarding defects or not, they're giving an overview of, what they see in their appraisal report. So in this particular case that WRA had referenced, the condition of the property did include um, things with the foundation that the appraiser pointed out, and the appraiser didn't call it a defect. He didn't, he doesn't have the authority to call something a defect. It's kind of like when we go in and do a visual inspection of a home, we see certain things. That's kind of similarly how the appraiser in this case was acting.
Sure. Okay.
Good. Sorry I'm late.
Oh, no worries. I
You're
don't know.
doing wonderful.
Do we
You're
want to
doing
take questions after each slide, or should I just keep talking?
Oh,
yeah, just ask. Yeah.
yeah, we always and thanks again, you guys, for your patience. We always allow agents to pipe in with questions whenever. So,
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
yeah.
You can either raise your hand or turn off your mute and speak up.
All right. So big question here, is the seller required to allow such an inspection because the seller had allowed an inspection for the home inspection contingency? And I'm thinking, we didn't have information on this, but I'm guessing, that the inspector probably maybe pointed out a defect regarding the foundation. Maybe they didn't. I would say, you could even talk to the lender and say, we had a home inspection and there wasn't any issue brought from the foundation, but I don't know that that's going to stand, because now we've gone past the inspection contingency and now we're in the process of the appraisal and the finance contingency. So two separate contingencies and two different, I guess you'd say, actors in this
Yeah.
situation. The lender can, under any circumstance that they want, withhold a loan commitment based on basically any issues. And in this case, it was a foundation evaluation. So WR recommended that you would amend the offer, have a discussion, stating that the buyer cannot get their loan commitment unless this inspection is scheduled, and then put together some sort of amendment so that you have documentation of what parts of the property now this foundation inspector has access to, and why they're doing this, because you don't want to open up this can of worms to have a foundation inspector maybe go around the whole perimeter. Maybe the condition for the loan commitment is only the west wall.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to make sure that you have it completely documented. What do we need to do to get that contingency lifted? Meaning, what can we do to get that loan commitment?
Yeah, the buyer at this point, if I'm not incorrect, Steph, the buyer at this point could bring in the uh, compensation for an inspection. So they could send an amendment saying, if we have to allow this inspection according to our lender for me to get my loan, I will offer, up to $3,000 of anything or something like that. I mean, that would have to be approved by the lender also.
Yeah, that could be one way that it's negotiated if something happens or if something comes of a um foundation inspection that might be required by an appraiser. Yeah, for sure. But kind of back to like what Andrew was saying, um I also just feel like these things now are outside of the inspection contingency, and we're just moving now, even though it's like inspection type issues, they're really being handled through the umbrella of the appraisal and the loan commitment contingencies. So, I think that's just like kind of important to understand that like uh it feels like we're operating, like I said, under the inspection contingency, but we're operating for sure underneath the appraisal contingency and the financing commitment contingency.
Right.
Um,
And I think, yeah, the seller could say, no, absolutely not. We're not going to allow such an inspection. The problem with that is, well, then the buyer is going to use the loan commitment or the finance contingency to get out of the deal.
Right.
Right. This happens when they have an FHA or a VA loan. That appraiser that comes in for a VA or FHA is more strict and looking for things and usually will recommend some kind of a foundation inspection or whatever. But we usually in the past have not seen it on a conventional loan where the lender will ask for this kind of an inspection from the appraiser. Andrew, are you seeing more of a trend of this happening with conventional loans?
I have not specifically seen it happen to our agents. Like I said at the beginning, is this started for me with one of my investor clients who was going to purchase an investment property and flip it, and he was going for a conventional loan. We'd never had this issue in the past, and then all of a sudden, you know,
Right.
this kind of came out of nowhere.
Two things. I've seen it with DSCR loans. I don't know if that makes a difference, but I have seen that happen a couple of times. And I'm like, what's going on here? Where the appraiser was asking for repairs.
Yeah. What kind of loan was it, Leah?
DSCR, like the investors loans.
Oh,
And
Yeah.
that could possibly be what the buyer is going for in your situation, Andrew. He's
Right.
getting investor's loan.
Yeah,
Uh,
and this was also a loan that was going to, of course, be sold off. You know,
Oh.
a lot of times investors work directly with a brick and mortar bank, and they're going to hold on to the loan, so they're not maybe as stringent as someone where they in the secondary market where you have to sell the loan to someone. You know, they want to make sure the investor wants to make sure that those are all, you know, nice and clean, tied in a pretty package
Sure.
with bow on top.
Well, I've had questions regarding this particular situation a few times, to the point where it is happening more. I mean, conventional loans are getting appraisers that are asking for repairs to be done. You're going to expect it with an FHA or VA, and that's why a lot of sellers don't want to accept a VA or a FHA. But I don't know, it might be more of a trend, and as you say, it's a more of a guaranteed loan for an investor or for an increased stability in that loan.
Leah, did you have another comment? Either Leah, did you have another comment? I thought.
I do, but I just need 1 second, please. Thanks.
Oh, okay. All right. We'll have you chime in when you are ready. And okay, so then we'll move on to the next slide.
So this talks about if all, you know, let's assume, you know, you had the foundation inspection and all of a sudden, you know, yeah, the wall is an inch out of plumb or whatever. Because the deadline to deliver notice of defect as part of the inspection contingency is passed, the buyer would not be able to submit a notice of defects based on that inspection. However, if the lender doesn't issue the loan commitment based on the results of the inspection, the buyer could submit a rejection letter stating, you know, that the bank isn't going to finance it and they can back out of the deal under the finance contingency. So, like I said before, it's you know, it's probably a good idea to just be on board and fix things. I would also, you know, if you're the listing agent and you're in a situation like this and you know that your seller might be adamant that yeah, they can have an inspection, but I'm not going to fix anything, you might want to advise the agent on the other side that yeah, you can have your inspection, but we don't want to see the report. We don't want to, you know, we don't want to see anything, because once the agent or once the seller is made aware of a defect, you have to, you know, it's our duty and obligation to disclose that. So I could see where, you know, some listing agents might say, yeah, we'll go through with it, but we don't want to know anything.
But the lender will
Also
see.
yeah, you can have the situation on the other side where, yeah, we want to know something, but we're not gonna, work with you on getting it fixed. And I threw in that little caveat, in any case, this is where, you might want to have an attorney just bounce it off of them to make sure, because we can't give legal advice. So we can only tell them the ins and the outs of the contract and what their obligations are or are not.
So that kind of leads into my question.
Hmm.
Just went under contract on a property that is a part of a divorce proceeding, and the judge has said they can't make any repairs. Now, my buyers are pretty okay with that. It's a bit of a fixer-upper anyway, so they're making repairs, but there's one electrical cord that is like hanging from the ceiling. It's connected to something and it's running to something else. And we're wondering if the appraiser may call that out. Steph, I sent you a picture because my camera doesn't work on my
Oh,
laptop, but I did send you a picture just in case you were able to see it via email.
sure. Let me.
It We're wondering if the appraiser would hold up the transaction because of that.
And they
And the
obviously they
seller,
haven't. You're on the seller side or the buy side,
My
Leah?
side.
What were you gonna say, Joan?
can't the seller hire an electrician and find out what it is without having an inspection done and maybe
Well,
get it fixed?
they can't, that's the judge said they can't fix anything.
Okay, that's right.
Oh, this is strange.
Yeah.
I'm looking at these pictures. I mean, honestly, Leah, I don't know. I mean, they could. Um, so I mean, I know we're really getting into the weeds with this question. This is so specific.
And I
But
was just wondering if that, like you're saying, our appraisers becoming inspectors now, would that be
it
something
might.
they could do?
I could see looking at this picture, I mean, I could see that being something that they would want to question. Whether or not they do, I don't know. And, but I mean, I feel like, I don't know. I mean, if a judge is making such a sweeping statement on like no repairs, I mean, does that mean like specifically like they can't make any concessions on a potential repair?
Yeah.
It seems like such a broad stroke of
Mhm.
like, this is
And
still,
making it hard to sell.
yeah, like this is still a transaction and still would need to play out, but
Yeah.
like, yeah, as Joan just said, if like this could halt a sale, I mean, if let's say the appraiser does call this out and says like we need this corrected prior to a closing, I feel like that might be something that the
Well, the
seller.
buyer has an option to get out at that point if he doesn't get his loan because of this.
Mhm.
The
Yeah.
lender would know that the appraiser brought this up, whether the seller knows it or not. And he just wouldn't get his loan. It's a property that's obviously being sold in as is condition in that sense, by the judge's order.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's
But then he wouldn't get his loan.
And then those sellers are only probably able to get cash offers,
Mhm.
So,
okay. I don't
uh,
want to take too much of your time on my personal situation,
no,
but
no, it's okay. But yeah, this is uh, it's a definitely an interesting one, and I think this is like you just have to take this one as it comes. And it seems like the listing agent would want to make efforts with the seller to, you know, have correspondence with a judge on something like this. I mean, it just seems like this could be easily remedied with a concession or something, you know?
Yeah.
But why don't you get in touch with us after the appraisal happens and let us know what
I,
happens?
I sure will. Keep you posted.
Want to know. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Move on.
It's a good topic, Andrew.
Yes.
Okay, so what happens if the deal falls apart or seller is not willing to work with the buyer? I think we kind of I touched on this in the last slide. Um, it it's definitely going to be in the best interest of the seller to work with the buyer so that all parties can get to the closing table. Um, Remember that if defects are found and a report is delivered to the seller as part of the finance contingency, or even in the unavailable of financing, seller and listing agent are obligated to amend the condition report. Seller's unwilling, the listing agent may have to present a notice of material adverse facts to any prospective buyers.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I would say it's in everyone's best interest to, sit down, talk, and try and come up and negotiate and put something together. Because at the end of the day, our job is to, work and get all parties to the closing table.
Mm-hmm.
The buyer might even try to find another lender too.
Yep,
Um,
that's definitely an option.
Right.
And this I was in the hot tip that I got from WRA. As a listing agent, you should be aware that a buyer who is using a government-backed loan or even down payment assistance may waive the inspection and the appraisal contingencies, but is likely going to be required to have an appraisal as part of the finance contingency. So if the seller resists this, the buyer would be able to again demonstrate that financing is unavailable. I think we saw a lot of this when people were trying to write really really clean offers and removing the appraisal contingency. However, understand that as part of the finance contingency, you're going to need an appraisal.
Mm-hmm.
So just something, I think this is something to think about as a when you're representing the seller, to let them know that, hey, yeah, there's no appraisal contingency, and the seller can't come, or the buyer can't come back to us and negotiate the price once the appraisal happens. But the appraisal still is going to be a requirement of the finance contingency, especially with the government-backed loans.
Right. Now, the lender may approve the loan even though they don't get a satisfactory appraisal.
Right.
That's a possibility. But for the most situations, you're right, Andrew, that that appraisal is locked into a conventional loan or definitely an FHA or VA loan.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, good work. I think when you have questions about this, as I said, I've fielded a few questions on this topic where the lender has sent an appraiser that ends up recommending repairs. If that's not allowed, if it's an as-is sale, you probably have to only go into those as a cash offer. Because otherwise you're just gonna get to a standstill, or you can go find another lender. But it does create a block, and it is, you have to look at other ways around it.
Are there any other? Yeah.
Yeah, anybody else have any questions for Andrew or any of us? Okay. Thank you,
Um,
Andrew.